On Thanksgiving night, while everyone else was laughing around the table, my mother leaned across her plate, looked me dead in the eyes, and said, "You won't last 2 weeks without us." My brother chuckled, my dad smirked, and the room roared with laughter. I forced a smile, but inside, I made a silent vow. They'd choke on those words. I'm Mason, 27 now, but back then I was just a scrawny 19-year-old trying to survive in a family where favoritism wasn't a hidden secret. It was practically the house rule. I was the older kid, the responsibility experiment, while my younger brother, Calvin, 6 years younger, was the miracle child. The way they treated us couldn't have been more different. I still remember when I won second place in a regional robotics competition. I brought home this small silver medal, my heart pounding with pride. My mom barely glanced at it. "That's nice, Mason, but you know these little contests won't pay your bills." My dad didn't even look up from the football game on TV. Meanwhile, Calvin, who was around 11 at the time, barged in asking if he could get the latest iPhone. My parents' faces lit up like he had just solved world hunger. "Of course, sweetheart," my mom cooed. Dad grinned and said, "We'll figure it out." My medal ended up forgotten on the kitchen counter, right next to a pile of junk mail. That was my childhood in a nutshell. I scrubbed dishes, hauled groceries, mowed the lawn. Calvin sat in his room blasting music and playing video games. If I ever complained, my mom would snap, "Don't bother him, he's still growing." Apparently, my growth didn't count. Family gatherings? Brutal. Every cousin, uncle, and aunt heard endless praise about Calvin. "He's so smart, so talented, such a natural leader." Then, like an afterthought, they'd turn to me with a flat, "And Mason, what are you up to?" It was humiliating. But the breaking point came on Thanksgiving when I was 19. The table was loaded with turkey, mashed potatoes, gravy, everything you'd imagine. Calvin, 13 and cocky, was bragging about how he'd take over my dad's small construction business one day. "When I'm in charge, we'll expand big. Everyone in town will know our name." My parents beamed like he was announcing he'd cured cancer. Then, suddenly, my mom turned to me. "So, Mason, you're still at that little convenience store job, right?" I nodded, quietly. She sighed so loudly you'd think I confessed to a crime. "You should really be more like your brother. He's ambitious. I don't know what you're doing with your life." Dad piled on. "Honestly, you've got no plan. No goals. I don't know how you'll ever survive on your own." And then Calvin laughed in my face. "Yeah, Mason, maybe you can work for me when I take over. I'll give you something easy, like washing the company trucks." The table erupted in laughter. Except me. I sat there, gripping my fork so tight my knuckles turned white. Something inside me snapped. After dinner came presents. Calvin tore through box after box. Designer sneakers, a new gaming console, gift cards stacked like playing cards. Then my turn. I got a plain cardboard box with socks. One pair. My mom beamed like she'd given me gold. "Practical, right? You needed those." Calvin snickered. "Wow. Try not to spend it all at once, big bro." The room howled with laughter again. I forced a chuckle, but it came out bitter. "Yeah, thanks. Just what I always wanted, socks." Silence. My mom's smile collapsed. "Don't be ungrateful. Your brother deserves his gifts. He works hard." I snapped before I could stop myself. "He's 13. He doesn't even make his own bed. What exactly is he working hard at?" Calvin smirked. "At being better than you." The laughter roared again. My chest burned. My dad shook his head. "You always ruin everything, Mason. Always jealous. Maybe if you weren't so lazy, we'd be proud of you too." That was it. I leaned back, smirked, and said flatly, "Guess socks are the perfect gift for the family disappointment, huh?" The room froze. Calvin's grin wavered. My mom hissed, "Enough. This is why you'll never make it anywhere." I shrugged. "Cold. Then don't be surprised when I stop coming back." Her face twisted. "You won't last 2 weeks without us." I stood, walked upstairs, and packed everything I owned into 2 duffel bags. When I came back down, Dad barked, "Don't be stupid. It's Thanksgiving." "Exactly," I said, slinging the bag over my shoulder. "And I'd rather eat alone than choke on this circus." Calvin leaned back in his chair with that smug grin. "Good luck being a loser on your own." I stared him dead in the eyes. Better a loser on my own than a king on a leash. And with that, I walked out. Thanksgiving night. Cold streets. 2 bags. No plan. Just the sound of my own footsteps and the fire of my mom's words burning in my ears. "You won't last 2 weeks without us." I was going to make damn sure she never forgot how wrong she was. I walked into my first apartment the night I left. 1 room. Peeling paint. A mattress on the floor that smelled faintly like mildew. The heater rattled so loudly I thought it might explode, but it barely warmed the air. Still, it was mine. I sat there, eating leftover instant noodles from the gas station where I worked part-time. The sounds of families laughing and clinking glasses drifted through the thin walls. Thanksgiving night, and I was alone. It should have felt crushing. But instead, it felt like oxygen after years of suffocation. I had maybe $400 saved. Enough for rent and a couple weeks of food. My mom's words kept echoing. You won't last 2 weeks. I wasn't going to crawl back. I'd starve first. The next weeks were a blur of exhaustion. I picked up every shift I could at the gas station, then applied to anything that paid even a few dollars more. Fast food, warehouses, deliveries. If they needed hands, I was there. My life became a rotation of clocking in, clocking out, counting crumpled bills, and stretching ramen packets to last an extra meal. It was brutal, but it was freedom. Then, one night, I ran into Calvin. I was walking home from a night shift, uniform shirt stained with oil and sweat, holding a grocery bag with eggs and bread. A shiny black truck pulled up beside me. My parents had bought it for Calvin the week he got his driver's license. He leaned out the window, smirking. Well, if it isn't the runaway. I kept walking. He matched my pace with the truck. How's freedom treating you? Enjoying those 5-star meals of what's that? He squinted at my bag. Eggs and bread. Fancy. I said nothing. He chuckled, louder now, making sure the people on the street could hear. You're pathetic, Mason. You left all this. He slapped the dashboard of his expensive truck. For what? Rotting in some basement apartment? I stopped walking and turned. My voice was calm, flat. At least it's mine. For the first time, his smirk faltered. Just for a second. Then he laughed too loud. Fake. Yours? Please. You'll come crawling back. Mom and Dad already said it. You won't make it. I looked him dead in the eyes. I'd rather scrape change from couch cushions than beg them for gas money like you. His knuckles whitened on the wheel. He peeled off, tires screeching, leaving the smell of burnt rubber behind. That moment burned into me. I wasn't just surviving for me anymore. I was surviving to prove them all wrong. Weeks turned into months. I kept grinding. Took a warehouse job on top of the gas station. My hands blistered from hauling boxes. My back ached constantly. Some nights I'd collapse on that mattress, too tired to eat. But slowly my savings grew. I bought a rickety secondhand desk, then a used laptop. And one night, when I couldn't sleep, I typed "learn coding free" into Google. At first, I thought I was crazy. I was barely keeping my lights on, and here I was trying to learn something that felt impossible. But I stuck with it. Tutorials, forums, YouTube videos. I'd work 12 hours, then sit up at 2 in the morning breaking my brain over lines of code that wouldn't run. It was frustrating, but every small victory lit me up inside. Meanwhile, my parents kept calling, not to check on me, just to brag about Calvin. Your brother is so talented. He's helping with the business already. We're so proud of him. Every call was the same. They'd ask nothing about me. My rent, my health, didn't matter. It was all about their golden child. Until one day, something slipped. My mom called, voice sharp, almost frantic. Calvin's under a lot of pressure. Running things isn't easy. I blinked. Pressure? He's 16. What's he running? Don't be nosy, she snapped, then hung up. That was the first crack. Not long after, a former coworker from the warehouse told me he'd heard gossip. Calvin was blowing money on cars, parties, and ridiculous business ideas. Employees at my dad's company were quitting because Calvin treated them like garbage. I didn't know whether to laugh or shake my head. The golden boy was already rusting. Then came the moment that changed everything for me. I was at my warehouse job, hauling pallets, when a supervisor called me into the office. I braced for bad news. Maybe I messed up paperwork. Instead, he said, "We've noticed how dependable you are. Want to learn IT support for our systems? It's better pay." I almost fell out of my chair. It wasn't glamorous, but it was my first real chance. Nights of self-teaching finally meant something. I said yes before he finished the sentence. That week, I started training in a freezing back office with ancient computers. Most people hated it. I loved it. For once, I wasn't just a body moving boxes. I was using my brain. I was building something. And I thought, maybe I won't just survive. Maybe I'll win. But just when I felt a flicker of hope, Calvin reappeared. This time, not with mockery, at least not at first. He showed up at my apartment. Midnight, knocking on the flimsy door like the police. I opened it to see him, drunk, reeking of beer, eyes wild. "You think you're better than me now?" he slurred. I stepped aside so he wouldn't wake the neighbors. "Go home, Calvin." He shoved me. Hard. "You'll never be better. You're still nothing. Mom and Dad were right. You're weak." Something snapped in me again. I didn't shove him back. I didn't yell. I just looked him dead in the eye and said, calm and sharp as glass, "You're terrified, aren't you? You know one day, it'll all collapse. And when it does, you won't know how to stand. He froze. For a split second, fear flickered in his eyes. Then he stormed out, slamming the door so hard the walls shook. And I knew. The collapse was coming sooner than anyone thought. The night Calvin stumbled out of my apartment, slamming the door like a brat denied dessert, something in me shifted. I'd spent years being the punching bag of my family, but for the first time, I saw fear in his eyes. Real fear. And it lit me up inside. I threw myself into that IT support training like my life depended on it, because it did. I showed up early, stayed late, asked questions until my supervisor got annoyed, then asked more anyway. I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was climbing. Meanwhile, the cracks in Calvin's kingdom started spreading. I heard whispers around town. Employees were quitting my dad's company. Contracts were being lost. Vendors weren't being paid on time. Calvin, the prodigy, was apparently spending more time showing off at parties than learning how to actually run a business. But my parents? Oh, they were still bragging. Calvin's brilliant. Calvin's innovative. Calvin's under so much stress. Poor boy. Stress? From what? Deciding which leather jacket to wear while burning through Dad's bank account? I rolled my eyes so hard I thought they'd get stuck. One Saturday, while I was hauling groceries back to my place, I saw Calvin again. This time in the middle of the parking lot, leaning against a shiny sports car my parents had bought him. Sunglasses on, smirk plastered, acting like he was in a movie ad. "Well, look who it is," he called out loud enough for strangers to stare. The family disappointment. Still hauling bags like a broke delivery boy? I kept walking, but he blocked my path. "Come on, Mason, tell me, what do you even make? Enough to buy that loaf of bread? Maybe some ramen?" He laughed at his own joke like it was comedy gold. I stopped, looked him dead in the eye, my voice flat as stone. "At least what I have is mine." Boom. His smirk slipped for half a second. Then he laughed too loudly, fake and shaky. "Yours? You're pathetic. You'll never be me." Thank God for that. I walked past him without another word. And you know what? That was worse than yelling. He wanted me to snap. He wanted proof I was still the weak, jealous brother. But ignoring him? That cracked his ego more than anything. The next year was brutal but golden. My IT job became full-time. $45,000 a year. To most people, that's modest. To me, it was a fortune. I paid my rent without begging for extra shifts. I filled my fridge with real food, not just instant noodles. I even bought a second-hand PlayStation. It sounds dumb, but sitting on my couch playing a game I bought with my own money felt like reclaiming a childhood I never had. And then came the phone call. My mom. Voice trembling, but trying to sound normal. "Mason, your brother, he's just under so much pressure. The business isn't doing well right now." I almost laughed. "Not doing well? You mean collapsing?" She snapped instantly. "Why are you always so negative? You should support him." Support him? The same kid who laughed at me over socks? The same kid who told me I'd be nothing without him? The irony nearly knocked me off my chair. I kept my voice calm. "You told me I wouldn't last 2 weeks. It's been 2 years. I'm still here. How's your golden boy holding up?" Click. She hung up. That was the first time I realized they knew. They knew the empire was sinking. A month later, I ran into my dad at a hardware store. He looked older, tired, but the arrogance was still there. "So," he said, eyeing me like dirt, "you're still fixing computers? Don't you get tired of being average?" I tightened my grip on the cart. "At least I'm doing it on my own." His jaw flexed. "On your own? Don't kid yourself. You're nothing without family." I leaned in slightly. My voice ice. "Everything I am came from surviving this family." His eyes went cold. His fists clenched. For a second, I thought he'd swing at me. Instead, he hissed. "One day, you'll regret turning your back. You'll crawl back, and I'll slam the door in your face." I smirked. You can't slam a door that was never open. The look on his face? Priceless. Meanwhile, Calvin's downfall went from rumor to reality. The business was bleeding money. My parents started quietly selling off the flashy toys they'd bragged about for years. One of the houses, then a car, then another house. They used to beam at family gatherings. Now they barely showed up. But the best part? Calvin's arrogance didn't shrink. It doubled. He strutted around town broke, still acting like a king. He actually cornered me one afternoon, sneering, "Don't think you're better than me just because you can afford groceries now. I had houses, cars, respect. You'll always be beneath me." I tilted my head, voice dripping with sarcasm. "Yeah, funny how all that respect disappeared the second your credit cards maxed out. Almost like people only liked your wallet, not you." His face turned beet red. He sputtered, fist shaking. "You'll never be on my level." I grinned. "You're right. I'll never be like you. Because I don't need mommy and daddy's money to breathe." That word, breathe, hit him like a slap. He stormed off, muttering curses under his breath, too angry to think straight. And I stood there, calm as ever, realizing something incredible. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the weak one anymore. They were. By the time I turned 24, my life was finally stabilizing. I had a steady paycheck, a decent one-bedroom apartment, and even a used motorcycle that made me feel alive every time I hit the highway. I wasn't rich, but I was free. And that freedom was worth more than anything my parents ever dangled in front of me. Meanwhile, Calvin was spiraling. The business was on life support. Contracts gone. Employees quitting. Vendors threatening lawsuits. My parents kept pouring money into his sinking ship like water into a bottomless pit. Their savings drained faster than they could hide it. And then they pulled a stunt so insane it still makes me shake my head. I was at work one afternoon, fixing a server issue, when my coworker Jen whispered, "Mason, you might want to check the lobby." I walked out, and my jaw nearly hit the floor. There they were, my mom, dad, and Calvin, standing in the lobby of my office like they owned the place. My mom had crocodile tears smeared down her cheeks. My dad was stone-faced, arms crossed. Calvin, he was pacing, acting like a caged tiger. My boss was standing there, clearly uncomfortable. I rushed over. "What the hell are you doing here?" My mom wailed loudly, loud enough for the entire office to hear. "You've abandoned your family, Mason. We raised you. And now you won't even help us when we're suffering?" Every eye in the office turned. My dad barked, "You're selfish. You sit here, making money while your own family is falling apart." Calvin sneered. "Pathetic. Still hiding behind a desk, while real men run businesses." The entire floor went silent. People were staring over their cubicles, pretending to work, but glued to the spectacle. And then, like a scene from a movie, someone new stepped forward. My manager, Mr. Torres. A no-nonsense guy in his 40s who rarely raised his voice, but when he did, everyone listened. He walked right up to my parents, calm and steady, and said, "You need to leave. This is a workplace. You're disrupting my employees." My mom blinked at him, shocked. "Do you know who we are?" Torres didn't flinch. "I don't care. You're trespassing. Get out." Calvin laughed like a hyena. "You think you can talk to us like that? Do you know my family name? We built this town." Torres leaned in slightly, voice sharp. "Your family name means nothing here. Mason earned his place. You didn't. Now get out." The room erupted in whispers. My coworkers, who'd always been polite but distant, suddenly looked at me with wide eyes. Some even smirked. For once, I wasn't the loser in the room. I was the guy whose arrogant family just got dragged in public by the boss. My mom's tears dried instantly. She hissed at me, "You'll regret this, Mason. You're heartless." I didn't raise my voice. I just smirked. Better heartless than spineless. Torres called security. My parents stormed out, dragging Calvin behind them as he shouted threats like a cartoon villain. "You'll be nothing. You'll regret crossing me." When the doors slammed shut, the office burst into laughter. People clapped. Jen patted my shoulder and whispered, "That was epic." But the fallout wasn't over. That night, Calvin showed up at my apartment again. This time, he wasn't drunk, he was furious. His face was red, his eyes bloodshot. He shoved past me into my living room, shouting, "You embarrassed me. In front of strangers. You think you're better than me now?" I crossed my arms. "I don't think. I know." He froze. His fists clenched. "You don't get it. I'm the one who's supposed to make it. Not you," Mom and Dad said. I cut him off. "Yeah? Look around, Calvin. Who's actually paying their bills? Who's surviving without handouts? It's not you." And then, the twist. He dropped his voice. Almost a whisper. "I need money, Mason." I blinked. "Excuse me." His jaw trembled. I need a loan. Just until things stabilize." I laughed. Out loud. Hard. "You? Asking me? The loser brother? The guy you mocked over socks?" He turned pale. "It's different now. Please." And for the first time in my life, I saw Calvin for what he really was. Not a king. Not a prodigy. Just a scared, broken boy who'd never learned to stand on his own. I shook my head slowly. "No." His face twisted. He screamed, slammed his fist on my table, then stormed out, slamming the door so hard the frame rattled. The silence after he left was deafening. I sat there, staring at the dent in my table, and realized something chilling. The golden child was begging me for scraps. And this was only the beginning of their collapse. After Calvin stormed out of my apartment that night, I thought maybe, just maybe, he'd finally hit rock bottom. Maybe he'd get a job. Maybe he'd grow up. But nope. Instead, he went nuclear. 2 weeks later, I was at the grocery store when a neighbor whispered, "Mason, did you hear about Calvin?" My stomach dropped. Apparently, he'd thrown a massive party at one of the houses my parents still owned, except he hadn't paid the utilities in months. The electricity was cut, the water shut off, but that didn't stop him. He invited half the town, blasted music with a rented generator, and trashed the place. By morning, the cops had shown up, the house was destroyed, and my parents were slapped with fines they couldn't afford. And when the story hit the local paper, the headline wasn't about Calvin. It was about my dad's failing company. Public humiliation. But that wasn't the shocking part. That came later. A week after the party disaster, my mom called me, voice trembling, but not from tears. This time it was fear. Mason, we need to talk. There's something you don't know. I braced myself. She hesitated, then whispered, the business wasn't just Calvin's mess. Your father, he put everything in your name. I froze. What? You were the older one, she rushed. When you were a teenager, we used your social security number for loans. It was easier. You didn't need credit back then. We thought it wouldn't matter. I almost dropped the phone. They'd used me. My own parents had built their golden child's empire on my back, and now that it was crumbling, the debt collectors weren't just chasing them. They were chasing me. Rage flooded me so hard I couldn't even breathe. You destroyed my credit before I even had a chance to live, and you didn't think to mention that. Her voice cracked. We thought Calvin would succeed. We thought he'd pay it all back. He was supposed to take care of us, and you too. I laughed. Bitter. Harsh. Take care of me? He couldn't even take care of a goldfish. I hung up. My hands were shaking so badly, I nearly threw the phone across the room. That night, I sat at my desk, staring at old bank statements, realizing why my credit had always been trash even before I had my first real job. Every denial letter, every loan rejection, it all made sense now. They hadn't just ignored me. They'd sabotaged me. The next morning, I walked into the credit office to pull my full report. And there it was. Thousands upon thousands of dollars in loans, credit cards, and business accounts opened in my name, stretching back almost a decade. My parents had stolen my future before it even began. I walked out of that office with a folder in my hands and a storm in my chest. My phone buzzed, Calvin. I almost ignored it, but I picked up. His voice was sharp, desperate. I know Mom told you. Listen, you need to chill. It's not a big deal. Just help me get things straightened out, and it'll be fine. Not a big deal. I snapped. You destroyed my credit. You built your fantasy life on my name. You think I'm going to fix your mess? He scoffed. Stop being dramatic. You should be thanking me. Without me, you'd be invisible. At least now people know your name. I laughed so hard it scared him. Yeah, they'll know my name when I take this to the cops. Silence. Then his voice dropped to a whisper. You wouldn't dare. I gritted my teeth. Watch me. For the first time in years, Calvin didn't have a comeback. He just hung up. That was the moment everything shifted. The family drama wasn't just about favoritism anymore. It wasn't just about humiliation at holidays or being the forgotten son. It was fraud, identity theft, a betrayal so deep it cut through every bone in my body. And now I had evidence. And I was ready to burn down their fake little kingdom once and for all. I didn't sleep after finding out the truth. My parents hadn't just ignored me. They'd stolen my identity, my future, my chance at a clean start. All those years I thought I was simply unlucky. No, it was them. By morning, I was done being quiet. I walked into work with the folder of documents tucked under my arm. My boss, Mr. Torres, noticed the look on my face and asked if I was okay. I smiled coldly. I'm about to blow up my past. That night, I filed the police report. Fraud. Identity theft. Every loan. Every credit card. Every signature that wasn't mine. The officer raised his eyebrows as he skimmed the evidence. This is big. You sure you want to go through with this? I stared him dead in the eye. I've never been more sure of anything. The investigation didn't take long. My parents and Calvin weren't exactly careful. Paper trails, signatures, accounts. They'd been sloppy because they thought I'd never fight back. Within weeks, subpoenas were issued. And then came the moment I'll never forget. The court hearing. The courtroom was packed. My parents sat stiffly at the front. Calvin slouched beside them in a cheap suit that didn't hide his arrogance. The whispers in the audience buzzed like bees. Everyone knew this wasn't just a case. It was the fall of a family that once strutted through town like royalty. When the judge called my name, I stepped forward, heart pounding but steady. I handed over the folder. Page after page of proof. My mom gasped, eyes wide with fake shock. Mason, how could you do this to us? We're your family. I snapped. Loud. Clear. You did this to me. You stole from me before I even had a chance to live. You ruined my credit. You mocked me for being broke when you were the reason I couldn't breathe. The room went silent. Even the judge paused. My dad tried to stand, his voice booming. He's lying. We supported him his whole life. I laughed, sharp and bitter. Supported me? You gave me socks while you bought Calvin houses and cars. You told me I wouldn't last 2 weeks. And yet here I am, standing, while you're sitting there drowning in your own lies. Gasps rippled through the crowd. The judge pounded the gavel. Order. But the damage was done. Everyone had heard it. The ruling was brutal. My parents were found liable for fraud. Calvin, too, for knowingly benefiting from the stolen credit. Fines. Debt. Bankruptcy. Their empire? Gone in flames. The fallout was instant. The town that once worshipped them turned its back overnight. My dad lost every ounce of respect he'd clung to. My mom couldn't show her face in public without whispers following her like shadows. And Calvin? He became a walking joke. The prodigy who built an empire on his brother's stolen name and still managed to sink it. But the Real explosion came a week later. I was walking home from work when Calvin pulled up in a beat-up sedan, miles away from the sports cars he used to flaunt. He stumbled out, eyes wild. You ruined me, he shouted, voice cracking. You think you've won? You think people respect you now? They'll always see you as nothing. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't need to. I just looked him dead in the eyes and said, better nothing on my own than everything on a leash. He froze. His mouth opened, then shut. For the first time, he had no words. He drove away without another glance. And that's when I realized I had finally won. Not because I was rich, not because I had power, but because I was free. Free of them. Free of their poison. Free to build a life that was truly mine. Months later, my credit was cleared. My career in IT kept climbing. Torres promoted me again, this time to a leadership role. I bought a better apartment. Then a house. Not huge, not flashy, but mine. Every brick, every wall, paid for with my own money. Sometimes, late at night, I'd think back to that Thanksgiving when my mom sneered across the table and said, "You won't last 2 weeks without us." And I'd smile, because not only did I last, I outlived their kingdom. The golden boy's crown shattered, the king and queen dethroned. And me? I walked away with the only thing they could never give me. My freedom, my dignity, and the last laugh. That's the end of today's story. Did things turn out the way you thought, or were there some surprises along the way? Share your thoughts in the comments. I'd love to hear what you think. If you enjoyed this journey, don't forget to hit the like button. And if you haven't joined the community yet, now's the perfect time. Subscribe and turn on notifications so you're always the first to catch new stories. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next adventure.